Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second CARSP Safety Network newsletter video interview. My name is Dr. Emily McCullogh, and I am a postdoctoral researcher at York University and member of the CARSP editorial board. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Alison Macpherson, full professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Science at York University, prominent epidemiologist and injury prevention researcher and advocate. Dr. Macpherson will be sharing insights regarding the substantive links between safe and sustainable transportation and meaningful action against climate change. Dr. Macpherson, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCullogh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So, just to get started, can you tell us a fun fact about yourself?
Sure. I think something that's perhaps a bit unusual about me is I have, in the course of my research and personal career, visited 30 countries around the world, but I've never been to Scotland, which is the country that my ancestors settled from.
Oh, wow. Yes, you are quite the jet setter. I've taken a look at some of the places you've traveled and some of the conferences you've been a part of. It's quite impressive. So how did you get involved in the injury prevention and road safety world?
Well, that's a bit of a long story. I won't give you all the details, but I actually started my career in health administration, and I was working as a manager at the Montreal Children's Hospital. And at that time, Dr. Barry Pless, who is Canada's preeminent injury researcher and formed the foundation of injury research in Canada and around the world, had just started the Canadian Hospital's Injury Reporting and Prevention, CHIRP program, at children's hospitals across Canada, including the Montreal Children's. And as it was my staff, I was a manager, and they were responsible for handing the form to parents and giving them instructions on how to fill it out. And at that time, which was the early 1990s, injuries were really seen as just an accident, Kid got hit by a car, oh, it's an accident. A school bus ran over a kid on the way to school, oh, it's an accident. But looking at the CHIRP forms and seeing all the children coming to the emergency department at Montreal Children's, I realized that injury was actually a huge child health problem, and that children were getting injured doing things that they shouldn't be getting injured doing, and such as being hit by cars when they're crossing the street. Long story short, my career kind of changed, and I decided to pursue a master's in epidemiology and biostatistics at McGill under the supervision of Dr. Barry Pless. And that study was part of an international study looking at child pedestrian injuries and children's exposure to cars. So we were counting how many streets children crossed on their way to school and home from school, and how that was associated with the child pedestrian injury rate. So that was my first step into it. And I've always been passionate that children should be safe to walk and bike to school, to the park, in environments so that they can enjoy their environment. It promotes healthy child development, and it also promotes sustainable transportation.
Great, thank you so much, Alison. So of course, there are substantive links between road safety and sustainable transport, as you mentioned. So how is safe and sustainable transportation connected to action against climate change?
So that's a great question. And I think, the easy answer is every time you get somebody out of a car and into a more sustainable mode of transportation, the carbon footprint decreases. And so that's the simple answer. But I think if you dig a little deeper, that sounds so easy. Oh, let's just have people walk and bike and take public transit. And it's not actually that simple, because especially in North America, but in other parts of the world too, including Australia and the US, we have designed our cities and our environment to be very car friendly, to make it, the traffic engineers, traditionally, their job has been to get cars from their point of departure to their destination as quickly and seamlessly as possible. And that has created an environment that is unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. The car-centric environment means that, there are signs like pedestrians yield to cars and, a lack of bike lanes, for example. So it's hard for people to get around. There's no network of bike lanes. So if somebody decides, I would like to bike from my home to my destination. When I first came to Toronto in 1998, I was set on biking from my home to my place of employment, which was then the Sick Kids Hospital. And it was terrifying. And I ended up switching modes of transportation because I did not feel safe biking. So I think that safe transportation, if transportation is not safe, people will choose modes that are safer. And the default mode often tends to be the car. If transportation is safe, many more people will walk and bike. And we can see that in Toronto. And some people say, well, it's too cold in Canada to bike in the winter. Well, Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto have made major strides in making bike lanes safe, having them cleared of snow, those sorts of things. So, and if they're open, people will bike. They have great biking mitts, they dress up warmly, and they ride their bikes year round. So I think safe transportation is the foundation of all of this. Because as I said earlier, if people don't feel safe, they will not walk and bike. So, if we are serious about climate change and we are serious about promoting sustainable transportation, safety of what we call vulnerable road users or people not in cars has to be of paramount importance.
Right, yeah. And it sounds like the design of the built environment has a huge impact on people's desire to choose that type of travel, right? Because amenities are further away in these car-centric urban centers, and it just doesn't make sense, as well as the safety aspects, to engage in active travel when things are further away, right? For people's busy lives and the time they have.
Right. And, so of course that I should have said that first and foremost, the built environment is what has to change. Sidewalks have to be broad, streets have to be slower, and we need an all ages and abilities bicycle network so that people who are just starting out to bike can feel safe and protected from cars all the way along their journey, not just on the part that's along the waterfront or the part that's along Bloor Street in Toronto. It has to be a network of people, and we need to change that built environment for sure.
Great, thank you. Um, so do you have any advice for our CARSP members on how to start projects or initiatives that promote safe and sustainable transportation to combat climate change?
Oh, yes. Fundamentally, I think it comes down to partnerships. This is not, for me, an academic exercise. I don't spend time sitting alone in my office thinking about how to make things safer. I think we have to work in partnership with municipalities and other levels of government for sure, because it's their policies around the built environment on our roadways that need to change in many aspects. But I also think we need partnerships with academics across the country. And we have been working on that and working with a great team of people. And finally, I think we can't forget our community partners and advocacy groups. For example, Parachute Canada has been a key partner in every research project that I have ever done because they have their ear to the ground. They do a lot of what we call knowledge translation. They share results of studies and they make it in a way that's digestible. But I think other organizations, such as the bicycling organizations, the pro bike folks, ever active schools, so the people in the school boards who are trying to get kids to walk and bike to school, I think we need to harness the energy from those partners as well. And remember that, it took quite a long time to make our roads this car-centric. It's going to take a long time to make them safer. And we will face very active opposition from people who are attached to getting around in their cars and who want to get from A to B as quickly as they possibly can. And they want to have parking that's easy, and they just want to maintain the way of life that we've fostered in North America for many years.
Right. So part of the challenge is to start structuring our environment so that the car is not the best choice.
Yes, yes. And doing that in a way that recognizes that many people believe, for example, that the car is the only mode of accessible transportation. If people can't walk or bike, then they have to drive. I don't think that's true. I think we can be a lot more creative in our solutions, but the default is, I'm 85 years old. I've driven a car all my life. I want to go watch my child play soccer in a park. I can't walk there. I want to be able to drive there. And that's understandable. And I think we have to listen to people and understand where their concerns are and where they lie. But this is just not a sustainable way for us to keep moving forward, making, the car the default mode of transportation. It's just going to be a disaster for our planet. Of course, there's other things we can do too, but this is one thing that is well within our means. And the other thing to remember is that active transportation is more equitable for people who can't afford to drive a car. Active transportation is better for people. They've shown that when kids walk to school, they arrive at school more ready to learn. They've gotten a bit of exercise and some time to leave their house to get to school on the way. If you watch kids walk down the street, they look at the trees, they look at the flowers, they pet the dogs, they, do all sorts of things on their way to school. So, although climate change is one super important aspect to this, there are many other benefits to individuals and to society by trying to make us all less dependent on our cars.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alison. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off today?
No, I think that's great. Just thank you for doing this. I think it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom. And we look forward to the next video interview. Take care, and thank you to our audience.
Thank you.